move on now to hear some more about EvidenceAid. We'll hear about beginnings of EvidenceAid from Pratap and myself in terms of the future, what we're trying to do with EvidenceAid in terms of knowledge management, prioritisation, gaps, and some of the challenges about the ethics in research. So I'd like to introduce Pratap from the South Asian Cochrane Centre, who kindly agreed to allow us to have this symposium before the Cochrane Colloquium. And Pratap is one of the people that was there at the very beginning of EvidenceAid, and he's going to tell us a bit about that beginning and a bit about why we needed EvidenceAid at the time we started EvidenceAid. Thanks very much.
Welcome to all of you to this pre-colloquium workshop of the 22nd Cochrane Colloquium. Cochrane is an international organization which to me represents one of the most altruistic group of people who have come together to try to provide reliable evidence for health, improving health outcomes. And this is the 21st anniversary of Cochrane. And it's very interesting because all over the world people recognize that when you become 21, you become an adult. And it's fitting therefore that collaboration are now embracing real challenges. It's trying to provide evidence in real-time disasters, particularly in low and middle-income countries, is extremely challenging. EvidenceAid is actually the legacy of the 2004 Asian tsunami. And it all started for us on the 4th of December 2004 when 25 of us met in Goa with the co-directors and director of the Australasian Cochrane Centre. Now, people from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka felt that it's good for us to have a centre here so that we can address health issues of relevance to our region that somebody in New York or in London might not consider important. So we wanted to train people to do systematic reviews and influence policy, and perhaps even influence the culture of primary research. So with these noble ambitions, we went home, happy that they were going to make a difference. And we didn't realize that it would happen sooner than later, because 2 weeks later, we had this terrible tsunami on December 26th, when everybody was recovering from a nice Christmas break. And this particular tsunami was probably the worst disaster we had encountered. And in fact, we didn't even know what the word tsunami meant. Most of us didn't even know anything about it. And because it affected a large area of coastline, it also affected people in different parts of the world who actually were not physically present, but who lost loved ones who gone holiday. And this particular tsunami in India affected largely the east coast, particularly the south. And one district was Nagapatnam district. We are about 500 kilometers from there. So we responded to the call from the government to provide help, because lots of people had been affected by the tsunami. Many people had lost their lives and their homes, and most people in that area were living in relief camps. There were 40 relief camps, large numbers of people in these camps. And the scenes as we drove in 2 weeks later were horrendous. The administration did a fantastic job of mobilizing support, but the scale of the disaster was so large that, really everybody we met that time seemed to be in some kind of stress. They couldn't sleep, they kept hearing these noise of the tsunami and picturing these waves, lots of rumors about continuing tsunamis and earthquakes, and lots of people were suffering acute grief reactions. And the kind of scenes that we walked into the villages were heart-rending. Nobody had homes. And there were predictions that most people are going to be affected by psychological stress. And so counselors were required. So the idea was to provide counseling to all the people who were affected by the tsunami. But at the same time, among us, there was a doubt that all of this was being exaggerated. And this whole concept that lots of people are going to get post-traumatic stress disorder, we really weren't sure it's really going to happen. Because in this part of the world, there are lots of cultural differences in the way we grieve. Grief is not a private affair or something you talk to a counselor about, it's public. And some of the ways we grieve is as tumultuous as a wedding celebration. And there are lots and lots of rituals that help you to confront and then later on to overcome grief. So you can't avoid grief. And there is a deep-rooted spirituality in this subcontinent that helps people to frame things that happen to you in a rather fatalistic manner. And that also helps people to come to terms. And there's no fear of retribution after death, because you're going to come back again anyway. And there is a non-linear model of causality. So I can have a belief in black magic, and I can also have a belief in the power of Western medicine. And this is not incongruous at all. It's, in fact, people in this part of the world would consider a person who thinks linearly as very simple man, because you have to have complex ways of looking at problems to survive in this part of the world. Besides which, the fisher folk in that area were constantly reminded of the history of administration, extremely resilient. And they warned us not to use or medicalize a problem which is actually a life. So the issue was, the government had nominated the National Institute of Mental Health, that's NIMHANS, to be the nodal agency to provide counseling and to organize the unruly mass of so-called counselors who range from battery salesmen to housewives. Everybody wanted to help. And the model that they were proposing was that they wanted to provide counseling for everybody, because the concern was lots of people would develop post-traumatic stress disorder. So the NIMHANS team was going from village to village, getting people together, listening to their horrendous accounts of what happened, providing some reassuring noises moving on, which is really what is called single-session mass debriefing, which originated from the post-Vietnam War scenario of the people with coma and large numbers of people. Our intuitive approach was to say we probably don't need all this. Let's just identify the people who seem to be in distress and also give people time, because you can't take away suffering. You can only have people cope with it. And it's going to take time for people to get over this natural disaster and find their own coping solutions. The problem was the media was mounting a lot of pressure on the fact that they have to do something. The administration is very concerned that they don't medicalize a problem. And activists have been saying the administration is trying to get out of their responsibility of providing resources for counseling. So we really needed some evidence to inform this political decision. Now, the Cochrane Library was designed to be an online resource, but fortunately it also came, and still comes, in a form that we use on the computer. So although we had no internet connections, we didn't have mobile telephones in those days, I was able to fire up the Cochrane Library in my laptop and find a particular review which is of relevance, psychological briefing for preventing post-traumatic stress disorder, which had been published a year earlier. And this particular forest plot of graph shows the results of about 6 studies, which does not suggest that giving single-session debriefing prevents PTSD in short. These are the odds of getting PTSD or not getting PTSD, depending on whether you got debriefing or didn't get it. There was some worrying evidence from one study which seemed to suggest that if you do psychological debriefing, it increases the chances of you getting post-traumatic stress disorder, because perhaps you sensitize people and then just work away from it. Because we couldn't find any overwhelming evidence to support an intervention which has a lot of resource implications, it suggested that let's not do this psychological debriefing for everybody. Let's just find people who seem to be vulnerable, and then follow them up to see whether they're recovering, or then provide help. It seemed more natural. So, from our own experiences, we had a list of grief-related vulnerabilities, and there are trauma-related vulnerabilities, and then the general problems that could help create problems, psychological problems. And this is what was the official response after this month. At the same time, this wonderfully altruistic organization and their champion here, Mike Club, put out a appeal to everybody saying, we need to help. How can we Cochrane collaboration? So apart from raising some financial assistance and giving it to people, collaboration decided to try and see how much evidence we can provide to star resource evidence. So that's how EvidenceAid was born, to compile a comprehensive list, prioritized and organized, of the health and social consequences of disasters. To that time, we didn't know. What do we do? What do we do? Identify recent evidence-based interventions that can be used to plan and mount a response to disasters, make them available to people who are involved in this, and then make an evaluation to see how useful this will be. That was the idea of EvidenceAid. So the early versions of EvidenceAid in the Cochrane website was this project providing resources organized according to categories and looking within the Cochrane library and within other evidence-based resources to see that you that would benefit. Now, mind you, many of these bits of research came from non-disaster situations. We were trying to see can we extrapolate them to disaster situations. Because in many situations, you must remember, research is largely about making predictions. From a small sample, you make a prediction that if you did this in a larger sample, this is what you do. So that was what EvidenceAid was trying to do. What we really learned from that tsunami was you cannot have divisions in countries because disasters strike and everybody gets involved. So this is an important lesson that we have to work with globally to be able to deal with disasters. We also realized that, for example, when we drove into Nagapattinam, one of the enduring memories I had were piles and piles of clothes sent by very many people from around the world who opened up their hearts. I swear I saw ballroom dresses lying in those piles of clothes. And these clothes are being sent to fishermen who go to new clothes. So this tells you that even well-meaning efforts to help need to be governed by somebody. And we thought systematic reviews would be a good way on which you can base your interventions. Now, after that, EvidenceAid continued to grow. And for example, we found that people in Chile who had been affected by the Haiti and Chile earthquakes were able to find EvidenceAid useful. And in Pakistan, when they had their floods in 2010, the collaboration opened up the Cochrane Library in Pakistan because they didn't have access to it. And we found that people were actually using a set of resources to comply with the Cochrane collaboration. In fact, it's also made free not only through the collaboration's efforts, but also through the National Library of Medicine. And people were actually downloading systematic reviews from the Cochrane Library during that time. And the emergency access to the National Library of Medicine gave us feedback on how many people were using their resource. And a librarian from them told us it was such an important part of our job to be able to respond to the need for evidence. People asked this resource is extremely useful. And our colleagues in Pakistan also told us when they were developing their guidelines, they found Cochrane evidence extremely useful. Now, what actually constitutes? We had a challenge from Dr. Mahapatra about the fact that Cochrane is all over our cities. And we ourselves had a doubt. Did we really do the right thing in 2004? Because this one study, and moreover, it was not a disaster situation. So we looked again to see what the updated Cochrane said. This came up some years later. We found 15 trials. They still couldn't provide any use in any of these disaster situations. And that one trial again reported the slightly increased risk of PTSD. But however, the quality of all these papers are not very good, very variable. And we really not sure can we trust all these results. Now, what we then did was 9 months after the tsunami, we went back with our teams and we did some qualitative research, focus groups of fishermen and housewives and young people to find out how did they cope with this. And their results were very illuminating because there are a lot of cultural differences in the way people respond. And in that area, they all became more cohesive and they collectivized the whole thing. They reconstructed meaning in a rather spiritual, futuristic sort of approach. They tried to solve immediate problems in social inequity. They all worked together as groups. And their belief was allowed to be expressed. And rather than go on their own spiritual roots, they really didn't think that psychological formal interventions were very relevant to their lives. They did the problem. Another thing that we felt was that we mustn't forget that often disasters result in positive transformations of societies. We must encourage those positive transformations. And lots of things changed in Nagapattinam after the tsunami. And any attempt to help should facilitate these transformations. So that was very important for us. We also did some quantitative research. We found that this term post-traumatic stress is rather inappropriate in that particular culture. But whatever you do, we found that the results was that 15% of them had this construct. And that means majority of them didn't quite well. And our predictive risk factors really showed that a lot of people who had PTS symptoms are people who lost loved ones to So the whole issue is, are they showing grief reactions or post-traumatic stress? This is of great importance to psychiatrists, like these nomenclature issues. But also will help you decide what kind of interventions you need to mount on those results. So they were able to do some research on what kind of people are most likely to get affected by tsunami. And this is kind of influencing psychiatric literature in looking at post-traumatic stress disorder in Asian cultures and poorer parts of the world. Believe that you're probably right in not offering universal counseling for basic resources. And we find that we should be looking at how can we help communities strengthen themselves. That's the kind of research that we need. RCTs helped guide our initial responses, but we were able to again confirm it with on-ground approaches. India has free access to the population, and I think it's very important for people who are failing disaster responses, humanitarian responses, make use of this national resource. There were a lot of questions unanswered at that time, how to mount a coordinated response, because everybody was acting on their own. A lot of engineering. I know the number of toilets that were built which were not used after 5 days because it was a very, very bad plan. A lot of things about occupation, how do you rehabilitate fishermen who are not scared to go back into the sea? What about the ways of infrastructure, strengthening infrastructure in an area where there's no infrastructure? Health, there's no mental health plan at all in that. So often disasters strike areas which are underprepared for disasters and also are not functioning well even otherwise. So you're starting off with a deficit situation and try and build up a disaster scenario. A lot of debates about how to deal with mass casualties, death burdens, and deal with social change. Lots of things have happened since then. We've got a national disaster management. We've got lots of guidelines. Many of those guidelines need to be revised because I think that the evidence base for a lot of the recommendations is not something. And the other question is how do you prevent corruption? We have a lot of things available. I'll hand you over to Mike who will take on what we were doing that time. Their evidence in this process.
I'm just going to spend maybe 10 minutes just refreshing some of the things that both Pratap and Santa have said about the evidence to try and give you a little bit more context on the process that we've gone through for the last few years on EvidenceAid. I would just like to highlight to people the small brochures that you have in your packs, and also there are many more of these brochures on the table at the back of the room. We would encourage you to take some of these with you, bring them back.